A hair-raising overlay of the grimmest war tales unfolded as Lieutenant Bay's voice, laced with the weight of finality, pierced the dim confines of my bunk on the destroyer. "The war is finished," he murmured somberly to me that crisp morning of May 9th, 1945, mere hours after our vessel had slipped away from Heligoland. Germany's unconditional surrender had taken formal effect at 2301 hours Central European time the previous evening, May 8th, though the inexorable unraveling had begun days prior. Adolf Hitler, cornered in his Berlin command bunker amid the thunder of Soviet artillery, had ended his life with a cyanide capsule and pistol on April 30th. His charred remains hastily buried in a shell crater by loyal aides. Power devolved chaotically to Grand Admiral Karl Donitz, who assumed the mantle of Reich president on May 4th, a naval tactician thrust into political desperation. The British, ever pragmatic in victory, had orchestrated the military capitulation of all German forces in Holland, northwest Germany, and Denmark during a terse ceremony at Lüneburg Heath's training grounds near Wendescheversdorf. Eerily familiar terrain, where I had sweated through the rigors of basic training drills under relentless instructors, my muscles aching from endless marches and rifle maneuvers. That same night of May 4th, Donitz, with tacit British approval, issued a frantic directive: marshal every seaworthy warship to traverse the storm-tossed Baltic Sea toward Heligoland and the Weser River estuary near Stade. Their urgent mandate? Ferry out as many beleaguered German soldiers and terrified civilians as possible to the relative mercy of Western lines before the surrender's iron curtain slammed shut, sparing them the Gulag horrors awaiting under Soviet grasp. The final flotilla, including the destroyers Z-25 and Karl Galster, departed Heligoland's shadowed piers at the stroke of midnight on May 8th, engines churning against the inky waves under a moonless sky heavy with foreboding. By sheer stroke of providence, or perhaps the lingering pull of survival instinct, I had attached myself to a ragged Silesian infantry regiment clambering aboard one of those steel behemoths that fateful night, my boots slick with salt spray as we jostled for space amid crates of ammunition and huddled refugees. Yet on May 9's dawn, our modest convoy bobbed perilously close to Red Army-held shores, the horizon scarred by distant smoke plumes from smoldering coastal batteries. Defiance burned in our veins. We vowed no capitulation to the Soviets, whose vengeful grip promised re-enslavement in Siberia mines or worse. Disregarding Moscow's barked radio orders to veer toward their fortified ports like Swinemund, our convoy commander, a steely-eyed captain with a scarred jaw from Narvik, patched through to British Naval Command via crackling shortwave. Their response was a lifeline: permission to steam onward to Copenhagen's Danish harbor, bolstered by carte blanche to repel any coercive intercepts with force. Our audacious noncompliance ignited Soviet ire. Shortly after, a wolf pack of patrol boats, sleek, snarling mosquitoes armed with 20mm cannons, surged from the mist-shrouded shallows, engines roaring like enraged beasts. German sailors, faces grim under steel helmets, unleashed a maelstrom from every deck-mounted weapon. The guttural bark of machine guns stitching the sea foam, the sharper cracks of rifles, and the thunderous belch of the destroyer's main 10.5 centimeters, guns hurling shells that erupted in geysers amid the enemy craft. Though cocooned below in my stifling cabin, the cacophony assaulted my ears. The rhythmic thump-thump of anti-aircraft pom-poms repurposed for the fray, the acrid tang of cordite seeping through vents, vibrating the bulkheads like a drumhead. The Soviets, outgunned and wary of our destroyers' broadsides, veered sharply into the enveloping fog bank, vanishing like ghosts into the Baltic's chill embrace. I never laid eyes on the skirmish, but its echoes lingered, a final spasm of resistance in a war's dying throes. Years hence, Lieutenant Colonel Eberling, my comrade from the Kurland Cauldron, confided over post-war steins that he'd evacuated in parallel pandemonium. A battered harbor tug, its decks groaning under the tow of a barge swollen with some 200 frostbitten troops, all layered in threadbare greatcoats and clutching salvaged rifles. Midway across the roiling Baltic, a ferocious gale howled in from the north, whipping waves to frothing peaks that swamped the barge. The tug endured, limping to safety, but the overloaded flatboat foundered catastrophically. every soul aboard. Men who'd survived Stalingrad's inferno succumbed to the merciless deep, their cries swallowed by the storm's indifferent roar. It epitomized the war's coda. Myriad anonymous calamities etching fresh scars on a fractured continent. By afternoon, our destroyer nosed into Copenhagen's bustling harbor, the air alive with the cries of gulls wheeling over barnacle-crusted quays and the distant clamor of dockside cranes hoisting crates under Danish longshoremen's watchful eyes. All hands received the brusque order to disembark via a swaying gangplank onto the weathered timber docks, where ranks of khaki-clad Tommies awaited, their rifles slung but vigilant. At a makeshift checkpoint ringed by sandbag revetments and fluttering Union Jacks, British sentries methodically disarmed us, confiscating bayonets, pistols, and grenades with efficient disdain. Still aboard in a shadowed corner of the wardroom, I surreptitiously dismantled my cherished Luger pistol from a tunic pocket, its blued steel frame etched with imperial proofs, a relic of Prussian precision. With a flick of my thumbnail, I extracted the firing pin, a slender brass sentinel, and hurled it into the harbor's murky depths, where it sank amid swirling eddies of diesel scum. Swapping it for my superior Astra pistol, a sleek Spanish semi-automatic with a 7.6 3mm bite, I holstered the neutered Luger, then secreted the Astra deep in my tunic's inner fold, its weight a clandestine talisman against unforeseen perils. Finally, with a pang of quiet regret, I unclasped my Iron Cross First Class, the coveted Knight's Cross, its black and white enameled swastika gleaming faintly, and consigned it to another pocket, its ribbon coiling like a serpent. At the checkpoint, I proffered the emasculated Luger to a ruddy-cheeked English sergeant, his tunic adorned with campaign ribbons from El Alamein. To my astonishment, he erupted in flawless, unaccented High German, his face contorting into a mask of visceral loathing. Damned Nazi pig. With frenzied tugs, he shredded my shoulder boards, golden pips denoting lieutenant rank, and wrenched free my ribbons, the Iron Cross clattering to the planks like discarded tin. Stunned, blood roaring in my ears, I stood frozen as humiliation burned through me, a raw wound deeper than any shrapnel scar. Wordless now, he jabbed a thumb toward the line's end, shoving me onward. In hindsight, I surmise he was a Jewish émigré from the Rhineland, one of the children's transport refugees who'd fled Kristallnacht's flames for Britain's uncertain haven, channeling years of pent-up anguish into this cathartic savagery. Absent that, my encounters with British forces proved models of stoic professionalism. Wary, yes, their eyes scanning for hidden zealotry, but devoid of gratuitous cruelty. From the checkpoint, I merged into a seething throng of 2,000 to 3,000 disheveled Wehrmacht survivors, herded like cattle onto a hulking freighter's cavernous holds, its riveted hull echoing with the multilingual mutter of Silesians, Pomeranians, and Danes. Amid the crush of sweat-soaked uniforms and the reek of unwashed bodies, I recognized no familiar faces for my shattered company, so I withdrew into solitude, leaning against a bulkhead scarred by salt corrosion, my mind adrift on the war's receding tide. Yet duty's ghost stirred. As a rated officer, I felt compelled to aid fellow lieutenants in quelling the enlisted ranks' fraying discipline, a Herculean task amid the vessel's sway. Chaos simmered. Fistfights over rations, profane catcalls echoing from hammocks, the specter of mutiny hovering like gunpowder haze. One harried colonel relayed a grim anecdote. An impromptu military court, convened by 4 or 5 grizzled colonels in the dim engine room glow, had assembled to judge an enlisted brute who'd savagely assaulted a superior with brass-knuckled fury. Verdict: death by shooting. They lashed a ponderous mortar baseplate, cold iron, etched with firing tables, to the convict's back, its bulk of ballast against feigned escape. A volley from service pistols cracked sharply, his body crumpling into the scuppers. With a heave, they consigned the weighted corpse to the Baltic's abyss, a splash lost in the freighter's wake. Justice, raw and retributive, in extremis. We threaded into Heiligenhafen Harbor's narrow mouth the following dawn, Schleswig-Holstein's windswept coast unfolding in muted greens and grays under a leaden sky. British troops flanked the gangplank once more, this time wielding bellows pumps to dust us with stinging delousing powder, acrid clouds of DDT billowing like chemical fog. coating uniforms in ghostly residue to purge the lice that had feasted unchecked. We marched inland, a ragged column snaking through dew-kissed meadows toward internment, the air sharp with the tang of wild thyme and distant manure. The sprawling open-air prisoner-of-war enclosure sprawled across some 30 square miles of undulating farmland encircling the hamlets of Grafendorf, Nandorf, and Alt-Gallendorf. Barren fields pocked with shell craters, repurposed as a vast human stockade. A mere handful of British patrols, rifles at the ready, traced the unfenced perimeter. Razor wire and watchtowers were luxuries deemed unnecessary for the broken-spirited. Within, the Tommies offloaded orders burdened to us armed forces officers, granting sidearm privileges with bemused indifference, perhaps underestimating how we'd smuggled pistols past their lax frisking. Assigned to a forsaken dairy farm sagging silo, I oversaw an ad-libbed company of 200 shipmates, their faces gaunt masks of defeat. Minimal control proved elusive. Anarchy's seeds had sprouted in the Reich's rubble. One lanky private slouched past, hands jammed in pockets, eyes averted. No salute, no deference. Where is the salute? I barked, voice cracking with frayed authority. He merely guffawed, a hollow bark echoing off the barn's weathered planks, and sauntered on. My summonses trailed unanswered into the mist-shrouded fields. Fury boiled. Once I'd court-martialed for less, but here, in this limbo, the gesture felt futile. He sensed no reprisal loomed beyond a hollow threat. Or perhaps it was the war's numbing pall. After 6 years of blitzkrieg, sieges, and steppe winters, we drifted in numb impotence. Destiny's rein snapped. No jubilation at our mistices tolling. Only a leaden resignation laced with gnawing dread for the morrow. The Germany of eagles and anthems lay pulverized. Leaders fallen, banners burned. Escape? Trivial, slip the patrols at dusk, melt into hedgerows. But whither? Allied zones blanketed the fatherland. Without a British discharge permit chit, one corded vagrancy charges, barred from breadlines or billets. The cow barn, vast and echoing with bovine ghosts, offered scant shelter. Straw-strewn lofts reeking of fermented hay, rain leaking through buckled tin roofs. Ablutions were phantoms. No basins, no razors beyond dull pocket-knives scraping stubble amid icy streams. But starvation clawed deepest, a relentless specter gnawing ribs to shadows. British largesse? A daily pittance. 4 or 5 soda crackers, palm-sized wheat slabs desiccated as jerky, doled from Red Cross tins. Hunger became our shadow, a hollow ache gnawing from gut to marrow. Desperation peaked. Scavenging dandelion rosettes, bitter greens I'd foraged as a lad in Puggin's meadows, their milky sap a faint echo of spring. I devoured them raw, stems crunching like verdant pennants. When my charges petitioned for a field kitchen, I acquiesced with a nod. Ingenuity stirred amid despair. Raiding a derelict stead nearby, we unearthed a sack of wizened barley kernels, dust-cake survivors of some forgotten harvest. On a jury-rigged stove, rusted oil drums fed by scavenged peat, the grain scorched to acrid char, an attempt to infuse savor into blandness. The resultant gruel, a lumpy sludge tasting of scorched earth and regret, slid down grudgingly, yet it staved off collapse, a caloric threadbare lifeline. Weight melted away like spring snow. At 6 feet, I'd held 180 pounds through foxholes and famines, forged on field kitchen stew. 2 months in, I teetered at 150 to 160, bones protruding like map contours. Survival's calculus tilting anew toward the void. Diversions? None contrived nor craved. Lassitude chained us to torpor, men curling fetal in corners, eyes vacant as they nursed private phantoms. Solitude reigned, a balm for battered psyches. At last, amid this enforced idyll, I seized pen and pilfered foolscap to pen condolences to the kin of my fallen grenadiers, ghosts from the Vistula's last dance. But names blurred in memory's fog, addresses vaporized in the Reich's implosion, even for the missing. Chaos massed mass graves. It wrenches still. Those matrons in Silesian hamlets, clutching faded photos, denied even a telegram's curt finality, their vigil eternal. Gazing back across the charnel years, 4 shrapnel kisses, a thigh gash from a Kurland mortar, a shoulder nick at Memel, rib fractures from AT-34's near miss, a scalp furrow in Pomerania, each patched by frontline medics with sulfa powder and field sutures, never evacuating me to a hospital's sterile hush. Divine caprice, I aver, the Almighty, in inscrutable ledger, decreed my thread unbroken. He charted paths beyond the pale. Annalisa, my anchor, and kin languished in ignorance of my breath, as I of theirs, war's black veil absolute. Letter dispatching was Sisyphean in the camp's void, but the Red Cross, that neutral specter, furnished prisoners of war with twin postcards, pre-Frank portals to the world. In hasty scrawls, ink smudged by calloused fingers, I inscribed to Annalisa and family, alive, healthy, British Camp Schleswig-Holstein. A prayer amid postal pandemonium that one pierced the ruins. Through summer's languid haze, releases trickled. Men summoned to the exit point, said like chattel. Late July heralded my summons. Foreseeing frisking gauntlets, I interred my Astra and paybook, identity talisman inscribed with Baltic blood oaths, in waterproof oilskin, trekking a mile to a copse of ancient beaches. Digging with a purloined entrenching tool, I entombed them shallow, camouflaging with leaf mulch and a lichen-crusted boulder. A 12-month later, under harvest moon, I'd exhumed them unscathed. At the vast exit depot, a mud-churned rally point ringed by barbed coils, I collided serendipitously with Otto Teppelman, boyhood comrade from Puggin's sun-dappled orchards, where we'd pilfered apples and dreamed of Air Force wings. He'd endured Russia too, evading Russians' noose in the Donbass retrenchment. Now, with Soviets prowling Puggin's lanes, he charted homeward. Ex-officers still vanished into Soviet maw, gulags yawning for the epaulet. So I masked Puggon as Lüneburg on my forms, a prudent fiction. Pre-discharge, I scribbled a missive for Otto to Courier Kinward, hedging against Red Cross roulette. My egress dawned July 27th, auspicious, as the pen's sole shade was cratered foxholes gouged by prisoner-of-war spoons. Appointed commander over a score-odd Lüneburg-bound troopers, we clambered into 3 olive-drab Bedford trucks, British corporals at the wheels, their cigarettes dangling from sneers. Days prior, Annalisa, my North Star, had intercepted my card, igniting an odyssey from Suderode's wards. Forsaking nursing without leave, superiors now under Union Jack oversight, she trudged to the Elba's fog-veiled ford, stowing away on a creaking ferry amid displaced throngs. Eastern Bank bartered a bicycle from a shell-shocked housewife for her heirloom brooch. The 100-mile pedal to Schleswig's wire, thighs screaming, rain lashing, dodging Allied patrols on cratered highways. Utterly spent, she staggered to the camp's wrought iron portal, only to hear the cruel jest, released yesterday. Oblivious to her cavalry, our convoy rumbled south 100 miles to Lüneburg's cobbled heart. At the labor office's forecourt, its facade pocked by flak shrapnel, I arrayed the men in ragged ranks, their eyes hollowed by internment's grind. The war is over. Go home, I intoned, voice steady as the last bugle. Thus, July's end, at 25, I shed the field gray for civilian clothes. Civilian once more, 6 years crucible behind. Otto's billet-delivered note shattered my family's vigil. No missive since Memmel's January maelstrom, nor the postcard, had breached their door. First tidings since my brother's shadow. Hermann, the whelp, adopted by storks at 16, drafted to anti-aircraft batteries, shielding Berlin's spires from Sturmovix. He bolted westward pre-capitulation, fording the Elba's turgid currents under moonlight, dodging searchlight sweeps to stork sanctuary in Lüneburg. Otto, stateside prisoner of war amid Arizona's saguaro spines and California's citrus groves, picked fruit under Yankee overseers, preferable to Colima, but exile's ache undimmed. Amid families gutted, sons triple-tallied in leader's folly, our trio's endurance gleamed as minor miracle, Providence's wry wink. Post-Yalta carve up. Allies quartered the Reich, Soviet East, American South, British North, French Southwest, like a felled oak divvied for hearths. Territorial amputations dwarf Versailles scalpel, East Prussia, Pomerania, Silesia. Bread baskets of black earth and rye, ceded wholesale to Poland. Alsace-Lorraine, reclaimed by Gaullist France. In 45, the Oder-Neisse line sliced Brandenburg's flank, funneling millions westward in treks of woe. Soviets rapacious victors, strip-mined industry. Salzgitter's behemoth steelworks near Braunschweig dismantled bolt by rivet, freighted eastward on groaning flat cars. At Polish gauge breaks, armed forces prisoner of war stevedores, gone from Rhine meadow camps meager slops, sabotaged slyly. Random parceling of crucibles, rollers, forges across trains, dooming reassembly to feudal forensics. Petty insurgency against plunder's deluge. Western allies, less voracious, pilfered opportunistically. Britzfeld Lüneburg heats ancestral oaks, timbers groaning under chainsaws whine, shipping shiploads to blitzed Blighty for reconstruction. Germans swallowed Western yoke with grudging grace, stealing against Soviet specter. Yet such depredation soured. They won. Now they plunder the rest. Only by 47 to 48, amid Cold War's chill dawn, did Yanks and Tommies morph into tonic eyes to bulwarks gainst Bolshevism's tide. April 45. GIs overran Pugon, evicting burghers to meadow bivouacs, tents pitched amid wild sorrel, supping tin-sear rations under wagon tilts. Decampment after fortnight left domiciles despoiled, not by combat, but liberated Eastern workers' vengeful ransack. Wardrobes gutted, linens shredded. Post-armistice, stragglers, field-gray phantoms, traipsed countryside, bartering watches for crusts. Mother, heart expansive as Prussian plains, fed them from larder remnants, draping civilian clothes, faded homespuns, to cloak their flight from patrols. June's end. Brits supplanted Yanks pre-July 1 handoff to Soviets per Potsdam Pact. Dread palpitated. Pugin's refugees bolted westward with Tommies, wagons creaking under featherbeds and heirlooms. Locals torn trailed, horses lean, belongings winnowed. My clan demurred, staking fate on soil sanctity. Brits withdrew, stakes sprouted along zonal scar. For schnapps flasks, Ivans waved stragglers through. Stay-behinds quailed at twilight's hush. Red Army ingress. Prost ragtag phalanx on shaggy ponies hauling machine gun carts. More Cossack rabble than Panzer legions. Bandoliers askew. Faces weather-beaten under fur hats. Mother later confessed bemused letdown. Such a rabble defeated our discipline. Initial charade. Liberators from fascist yoke. Leaflets in broken German extolling Stalin's grace. Facade cracked swift. Vodka-fueled animus flared nocturnal. House searches for stashed rifles. Commandeering larders for pilfered feasts. Sausages sizzled over bivouac fires. Bread dunked in ersatz coffee. Women vanished at dusk's innuendo. Rapes shadow long as Siberian nights. Initial foray to our stead. Mother's silver tongue. Honed by market hagglings. Barred stairs to sister's garret lair. Hearts hammering behind locked portals. Post-honeymoon, safe transit demanded male escorts. Doubles or triples. Shotgun slung. Though wartime mass rapes in Berlin tallied 100,000. Field marshals now cracked whips. Thuringia saw a rapist paraded, identified by victim amid jeering ranks. Then skull cracked by officer's pistol. A deterrent's brutal theater. Perils proliferated. Gestapo's legacy. Raids on people's traitors, mirrored in Soviet sweeps. Mother, prescient, consigned my memo leavings, spare tunic, pistol, iron cross second class, and wound badge, to the privy pit behind swine pens, sludge concealed. Dagger sentimental, Damascus blade chased with acorns. She secreted under ticking. Unearthed in a trawl, it summoned command post summons. Hours of hectoring in a commandeered schoolhouse, sisters' alibis strained. Release a grudging mercy. Solitary encounters smelled doom. Cyclists pulped under treads, accidental as tank grinds. Outliers fled to village hearts evenings. Absentees, steadings looted. Hens throttled, sides swiped. Cattle clubbed if recalcitrant. Extremes. Herd stampeded in spite. Galloping wild through snowdrifts that winter 45 to 46. Spectral herds haunting fence rows. Villages bowed to commissars, abetted by rote-learned German Red Front. Often zealots outstripping master's zeal. Leaflets decreed tribute. Victuals, woolens, blankets, warmth bartered for survival. Mayors remiss? Door kicks yielded seizures. Farms over 100 hectares expropriated. Edicts vacuumed homesteads. Owners suitcase-bound in hours. Even Christmas Eve evictions at Vespro 5. Stars pricking the gloam. Defiers? To camps they shipped barbed purgatories. New lessees, proletarian communists, ex-day laborers, clustered 10 to 15 per holding, feuding over furrows like jackals. Quotas crushed. Supporters eased annually, incumbents ballooned. Harvests siphoned to collective farms or Mother Russia's maw. Butter, eggs, bacon. Phantoms on plates. Families thinned, beasts bayed neglect. Psyche fractured worse. Quota dread birthed nocturnal sweats, Siberia specter. Taiga hells of pickaxe and permafrost, looming for shortfalls. Generations fled west, brood splintered. Youth bolted, elders rooted, escapees chained if collared. Such was Eastern Zone living space, July 45 to Christmas 49's cusp, July 27th, 45, post-labor office dismissal. I hoofed 5 miles to Storkstead in Hagero, field gray threadbare as my hopes, the same garb from Fischhausen's fray. Eerie homecoming. Here, 39's wire had snared me, life's pivot. Knuckle rap on oaken portal. Aunt's visage, etched by vigils, bloomed briefly, then crumpled. I thought Heinrich, she quavered. Cousin Heinrich, artillery captain, furlough-bound to lines. Shanghaied to Berlin's People's Assault Redoubt. Russian storm claimed him in Silo's thunder. Body unrecovered amid charnel piles. Despite their sepulchral pall, they enfolded me. Relaying Annalisa's love letter, first whisper in half-year's void, her script a lifeline across abyss. Hagen's sojourn, 2 dawns of heart stews and murmured kintales. Then, Hamburg-bound rattler to Wansbeck Borough, Mr. Brunt's threshold aglow. Welcome son-in-law, he boomed, People's Assault veteran of Ardennes foxholes and Ruhr barricades, fresh from demobilization. He quartered me amid kin-clan, a garret redolent of pipe tobacco and liniment, while I quested lodgings amid rubble rats. War's revenants stalked slumber. Nocturnal sieges in Russian bunkers, ground attack plane shrieks, morphing to bombs crump. One Hamburg gloaming, bunker trapped anew, I flailed, fists battering plaster, loosened by 43's fire raids. Wall yielded in cascade, dust avalanche entombing bed, shards tinkling. Household surged, lanterns bobbing, mortified, I stammered of old echoes. Cheeks aflame. Shell shocks gripped tenacious, peers fared grimmer. Decades till dive bombers silenced in Psyche's vault. Annalisa's Odyssey climaxed August 6th. Sooterode quit, discharge inked sans fanfare. Homeward portal breached, she catapulted into embrace. Arms vice-tight, sobs mingling salt and joy. A dyad reforged gainst Armageddon's odds. My devotion to her visage, porcelain resolve amid Memmel's mud, had armored darkest valleys. Tilsit's tread, gold apps gore. Amid her turmoil, no billet since retreat, presuming my grave unmarked in East Prussia's bogs. She'd mourned in vacuo. Reunion. Catharsis, tears cathartic as spring freshets. Fiscal reckoning, war salary accrued, lieutenant stipend plus combat allowance. Banked in Bremen's Armed Forces Treasury since 41 for post-war technical college dreams. Armistice vaporized it. National bank rubble, ledger's ash. Prudence? To gold or kin. Nay, survival trumped vaults when tanks faltered. Vanishment stung. A thief in defeat's night. Annalisa and I bootstrapped from naught. Kin's largesse lean as wartime substitute. Preconscription. Half-ticked engineering apprenticeship, 2 years gauntlet for degree prereqs. Fallback. Master electrician's 4-year forge. Guild-credited armed forces tenure, shaving to 18 months drudgery. Wages a pittance, scarcely sustaining. Prompt. Layman GmbH apprenticeship, sub to Blom and Voss's behemoth yards. Hamburg's pulse, birthing battleship kin. Commuter right. 15-minute suburban train to harbor. Ferry hop across Elba's oily churn to blown sprawl. Cranes like iron giraffes. Welders' arcs stabbing gloom. One shift. Master station me sentry by high-voltage switchboard. Porcelain behemoths humming menace. Nipping adjacent to toggle juice. Surges roar, titanic growl, ozone bite. Jolted me rigid, pulse hammering like 41's first barrage. Pranks punctuated tedium, but craft bloomed. Tracing schematics for destroyer refits, splicing cables gainst saltwater's kiss, absorbing arc welders' sizzle and blueprint esoterica. Harbor vignettes. Across Ulster's gleam, demo teams assailed submarine bunkers, Valentine's kin, concrete colossi shielding Type 7 wolves from Lancaster's hate. Charges bloomed subsonically. Roof plates heaved skyward in slow majesty, only to thunder down intact. Iterations ground on geologists dynamiting rebar veins, till collapse yielded, a German engineer's testament. Now rubble for rebirth. Pride flickered, Teutonic efficiency unbowed, but redirection beckoned. Channel forged to plowshares, not panzers. Annalisa nested cross from Brunt's tree nursery. Nursery plots bursting tulips. Her hands soil-kissed anew. Her flat, blocks for mine. Evenings entwined in candlelit suppers of black market kohlrabi. One plantain unblomen ramble. Hamburg's verdant lung. Fountains tinkling amid bombed pockmarks. Shocked. Every other laurel-screened khaki-clad dalliances. Tommies entangled with young women in fevered clinches. Lips bruised, limbs akimbo on sward. Vulgar tableau. We'd not profane public gaze so, our courtships chaste as Baltic zephyrs. Autumn 45. Scuttlebutt swirled. British edict, New Year's dawn. Marriage moratorium. Triennium to cull people surge. Persistence chilled. We hasten vows to Advent's Eve, December 22nd. Grandeur scuttled for intimacy. Yet I chartered a Berlin, ebony lacquer. Ivory stallions prancing, to whisk us to altar. Hooves clip-clopping cobbles under gas lamp haze. Micro-ceremony. Vaulted nave, organs wheeze intoning Bach. Annalisa, radiant in lace pilfered from hope chest. Post-vows, carriage to Aunt Frida's Wansbeck flat. My fresh pie de terre. For fate with Brunt clan, Herman's lanky frame. Marlene's absentee, roast from Puggenstye, smuggled pre-zonal pale. Finances pinched, honeymoon haggled. Monkbergstrasse lone Phoenix Hotel, amid Old Town's lunarscape. Telephone no, in-person plea, wedding night, unlocked suite. Clawfoot tub steaming potable water, a Sybarite's reverie in rationed realm. Dawn's idle, tangled sheets, whispers plotting tomorrows. Unions forge, tempered by tempests. December 45 to August 49. Western zone's economic miracle stirred, but penury's grip lingered. Ration cards for bacon and stockings, billet scarce as unbombed garrets, tram sardined. Post-nup, Annalisa quitted nursery. Era's ethos consigned women to hearth, jobs phantoms anyway. My yoke, provider soul, layman's kopecks stretched threadbare, potato soup thrice weekly, Brunt's surplus greens a godsend. Yet gnaw persisted. Weekend odyssey to Gifhorn's hinterlands, kin farm entreaty. Sack spuds bartered with shame's coin. Return, spud-laden, spirit-scourged. Depression's wolf leaner than this victor's peace. 46 fall. Marlene's iron curtain forays, hamper of sausage and rye waning. Pug-on pull irresistible, peril be damned. Hunger's lash unyielding. Train to Bergen-Belsen scar, former camp, now frontier ghost. Annalisa dozing on my shoulder, 75 miles rattle. Dusk descent to station street stanchions. Throng queued at wires whisper. Nightingales trilled vespers as we forded the security strip, 2-mile kill zone, locals only edict, patrolled by assault rifle shadows. Mid-traverse, stop, halt. Russian gutturals, chills dagger. 2 border wolves materialized, submachine gun drums slung low. No German, gestures bifurcated. Annalisa waved east, me west. Submachine guns muzzle prodding ribs. Yielding futile, I urged her flight. Tears veiling. She melted into alders, silhouette fading. Prod marched to steading. Mile off, my 44 captures echo. Farmhouse parlor. Settle sagging, icons ask you. Officer sent doomed me. Siberian freight certain. Minutes ticked. Latch yielded, unbarred folly. Portal cracked, I vaulted, circling jam shadow. No footfalls, bolt to gloam, shouts erupted. Submachine gun chatter lacerating night. Tracers incandescent stitching pines. Battle-hardened I crouched low, serpentine through bramble, lungs searing. Vectoring Hohendorf-Sleiben's glow, thrice-mile gauntlet, Annalisa's haven. Portal reunion. Vice clasp, pulses thundering, fate's dodge, narrow as razor. Lurking threat, village communists, snitches primed. Amplified by uncle's party stain, interned British side. Dawn raid, garret scramble, moth-eaten quilts my shroud. Annalisa's calm facade below, queries parried. Half-hour's probe egress, but peril clung. Exposure endangering ant. Morrow, 15-mile creep to Puggin's Cloister, Kinvale thicker. 4 days hence. Rucksacks bloated with provender, lard, bacon, sauerkraut. No alarms. Lone reprise. 46 autumnal pug on idle. Threshing right. Bundles fed to lean thresher's maw. Chaff swirling gold in harvest sun. Father urged morrow. I press finale. Hour shy dusk. Tractor's cough burst sparks. Straw avalanche ignited. Barn devouring in orange roar. Quench futile. Buckets sloshing from rain barrel. Voices hoarse over crackle. Conflagration contained. But granary's gut. Nadir's blaze. Guilt mine for haste's hubris. 47 spring. Annalisa solo ventured. Naive valor. Forage run. First unscathed. Sequel snared. Nocturnal patrol near wire. Silhouette dodged to granary loft. Dawn's yeoman, cows lowing, unearthed her. Mercy's nod. No squeal to apparatchiks. Recital chilled. Vetoed further follies. My sanctions recklessness. Famine's blindfold. April 47. Electrical engineering at Hamburg Tech. Journeyman creds July forged, guild stamped, wage viable. But study time precluded moonlight. Semester 1 Hamburg. Thence Wolfenbüttel, Braunschweig exurb. Ivied halls, lecture theaters, humming Kirchhoff's laws. Idled Annalisa jobless. We borrowed 1,000 marks from Stork's Opal Emporium. Gratitudes IOU. Wolfenbüttel's straight worse. No brunt bounty. Marlene's parcel sporadic. Despoils. Rings hock twice. Dresden jeweler's craft. Bean raids on moonlit acres. Thefts bitterberry. Pug on pressures mounted. Commissar tallies stalked livestock. Krista's lamb smuggle. Bleats stifled in boudoir farce. Father's barbs at party gatherings drew crosshairs. Quota shortfalls pretext. 48. Pastor Schmide's whisper. Secret police snare post-westward jaunt to Hagen. Father exiled there, schism yawning years. Otto's May 48 repatriation. U.S.-England limbo to our Wolfenbüttel nest. Fortnight's council, urging brides west flight. Eastbound regret. Zonal Pales prison. Final semester. Annalisa's swell. Eighth moon's promenade, trip to turf. Wagon borne homeward. Bruise blooming like storm cloud. June 49. Harold's wail, lusty as bugles. Our bulwark gainst void. Tribulations annealed us. 40's dregs, paradoxically halcyon. Reunited. War's specters paling in domestic heart's glow. Bonds forged unbreakable as Elba's flow.